Nice to have everyone with us. And as we get up and going, if you wouldn't mind changing your name to your full name and your location, that would be great. So we can see where everybody is from. You can do that by either right-clicking in that box where your photo is or your name and click on rename, or you can click on those three little white dots in the blue box and you can rename yourself that way as well.
That's right. That makes it easy for us to connect and get to know each other, even though many of you have seen each other before. We got some regulars here. Paul and Rob calling in from Oregon, and we got Lisette in the other end out in Rhode Island. We got Giovanni calling in from Jamaica, Gary from up in Canada, Bernard from Hawaii, and many others here, as you can all see. So good to have so many join us here this afternoon, this morning, this midday, wherever you are.
I know, I was wondering how early it is for Bernard in Hawaii.
Yeah, well, we are kind of used to that.
It's only 8:30 in the morning.
Okay, that's good.
There you go, right? And Jacob also from the Midwest in Missouri and is here as well. Yeah.
Excellent. We've got a few more people still joining us as we get up and going. So again, if you want to change your name to your full name and location, that's great. Then we can know where everybody is from. And I'm going to go ahead and get started sharing my screen. And thanks to all of those that have your cameras on. I really can see you. And so that's always nice for me to be able to see folks instead of just boxes with names. So today we're going to be talking about coaching principles. But as we get up and going, just wanted to comment a few words about GrowthWheel, because we've opened these up. So sometimes we have folks who are not GrowthWheel certified advisors with us. So we are based out of offices with New York, Toronto, Copenhagen, Oslo, and Johannesburg, South Africa as well. And we're used by a lot of different growth, advisors and folks in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So small business development centers or SBECs up in Canada, chambers of commerce, export advisors. We've got incubators, accelerators, makers, and we also have professional service providers like consultants and coaches and CPAs, angel investors, lenders. So lots of different types of folks in the ecosystem. And we've certified more than 3,600 GrowthWheel certified advisors since 2008. We're used in 7 Canadian provinces and 1 territory, including Yukon territory. That was my very last trip before COVID hit. And then we're also used in 49 states, some places statewide like Illinois, where I'm originally from. So we are used in a number of states. Oregon is represented today, and Virginia and Hawaii, and so Missouri. So lots of states who use GrowthWheel. We also are used by a number of women's business centers across the U.S., and we're used in 65 countries and counting. And we also work with lots of organizations. So in the United States, we have the SBA and the Small Business Development Centers. But South Africa, we have SIDA, we have SIVA in Norway, and Serotech in Chile, and lots of organizations like that we work with. So we continue to expand our international partnerships. We've got GrowthWheel translated into a number of languages and more as well. And no matter where those folks are from, it's always important for everyone to think about the coaching that they offer and those roles that you play. So we're going to do today, we're going to start off with a little bit of a recap from the certification course about those 3 roles that we play as a business advisor. We're going to expand on that just a little bit. And then we're going to talk about alternative coaching styles of either a consultant, a coach, and a facilitator. So we'll dig into that. Then we'll talk about the GrowthWheel tools and how you can use all the tools regardless of which coaching style you use, and talk about some ways you can do that. And finally, we'll talk about ways you may want to apply different styles on businesses within different life stages. So as we get up and running here today, first of all, I'm going to make sure that we are, hold on, we are recording. Good, just checking. Just like to double check that. Alrighty. Let me get this up and running again. Alrighty, where are we headed today then? As I mentioned, we're going to be going straight into the roles of the business advisor, because we know that you guys are right there at the touch point where changes take place. And maybe you're not in person yet with your clients. Maybe you're still via Zoom like we are today. But we always hear from people that say, we had an advisor that made all the difference. And we talked about this, how you've got advisors that make difference in different ways in those different roles. And one of them is that you can help those clients get out of that tunnel vision. So it's so easy for our clients to get caught up in a certain way of looking at things. And they just say, well, I can't raise prices. I'll lose all my customers, or I can't export, it's so complicated. And so I just want to mess with that. Or I can't afford to hire any more employees. But you can look at things from the outside. You know that other companies do successfully raise their prices, they do export, and they hire staff in a more profitable way. And one way you can help clients to see those other options would be to use something like the 360-degree screening tool to help them to see that there are options and other ways of doing things. And not just using it as a screening tool and getting a sense of where their focus areas are right now, but maybe even digging in for those root causes and not just the symptoms that they tend to focus on. So in the certification course, we give an example of a client that says, I just need help with sales. But maybe it's because they've got a really limited product portfolio, or they don't have any salespeople, or their cost of goods way too high. So you can help make a difference because you can help clients get new perspectives and gain those new perspectives and see things from a different way and see what might be the underlying cause and not just the root cause that the client sees. But also you help provide that emotional support for our clients. It's such a psychological role that you play as a business advisor, because it's not just about figuring out what's the right thing to do. It's also about figuring out where the person is, giving them the confidence to go where they need to get going. And one way you can do that to help them gain confidence is using the decision sheets. They outline those options for the clients. It's perfect for helping them to see what their real choices are. It's also simple. It's much easier than sitting with a blank sheet of paper and trying to figure things out. So here the clients have a guideline. Each one may not be exactly perfect for the client situation, but it's good enough to help them think through what all of their options might be. So we're trying to make that really simple. So you also help support those clients because you help them with those difficult decisions that they're having to make. But not only that, you help keep those clients accountable to the commitments they made to themselves and to you. Now, entrepreneurs don't have a boss or anyone telling them what to do, but we all need someone to be that accountability partner. And as an advisor, you can play that role to the entrepreneur. So you do this by making a list of the things you agreed. And when you see them next, you say, how are things going? So whether you do this with a 30, 60, 90-day plan on paper, or if you do it online, either way, we're trying to get a sense of what are their commitments? What are they going to be working on? So you make a difference because you help make things happen and make sure that they actually make progress. So we want to make sure that we're going to help you to kind of give those clients that perspective, emotional support, and that accountability partner. So what's the best way to do that? And that's really the question that we're looking at for today. Which advisory style is best to fulfill the role? Well, we're going to be kind of talking about that. And I wanted a few words on coaching. I am a certified executive coach. I also have a master's degree in counseling psychology. I used to be a mental health therapist. That was actually my first career, did that for several years. So for my graduate school education and my training as an executive coach, I can see there are many styles, many definitions, but this is a simple one. Coaching is really the art of asking questions instead of giving answers to folks. So we're going to talk about kind of the options and thinking about coaching. And I've got a short story for you as we get up and going. David, I don't know if you want to tell this one or if you want me to take this one.
No, I can share the story. The story goes that a professional tennis coach, rather tennis player, was on the lookout for the best possible coach. So he could become, even better than he already were. And as they looked around to find the perfect tennis coach, eventually they found one, which was a ski instructor. And the point of the story is that coaching is really a skill where you don't have to be the subject matter expert. So if you're going to coach someone in tennis, the most important thing is not that you know a lot about tennis, but you know about how to coach and find the potential in someone. So I think it relates to you as a business advisor. The best business advisors or business coaches may not be someone who is necessarily an expert in financial management or marketing or anything like that, but someone who is actually able to work with a client. So they learn and they take ownership of these decisions that they're going to make. So that is the story of the best tennis coach who was actually a ski instructor.
Who doesn't want a ski instructor as your tennis coach? So, as you said, David, the point is that you don't have to be a good coach. You don't necessarily have to be that subject matter expert. You don't have to be an expert in the coach in tennis. You need to be an expert on coaching and the process of coaching. So the real expert in that situation was the tennis player, but the coach can help anyway. So maybe you're not an expert on branding or financial statements, but you can still guide clients by being more of an expert on coaching itself. So we're going to take a look at these different styles, but maybe you can think about, has your job title sort of taken you hostage in a sense? It says business advisor on my card. I have to give advice. I can't just coach. I've got to actually tell them what to do. So you can kind of think through that. Are you expected to give advice that even maybe clients don't need or don't want? So let's talk about the kind of 3 different styles that we're going to be looking at, from coaching on the far left, with guiding, brainstorming, and questioning, facilitating in the middle, direction, giving them some direction, and sparring and making suggestions, and then giving advice on the far right, making recommendations, proposals, solutions. So we're going to take a look at these 3 styles here. So, when we're looking at the consultant style and making recommendations, proposals, providing solutions, it's definitely the most directive of the styles. So the consultant style really is saying to the client, I'm going to tell you how I think you should do this. And giving recommendations, saying, I've looked at your proposals. I think you should do this one. So it's really about, helping the clients maybe design their products. Here's what you should do with branding. These individuals might also sort of use their own industry experience to share that information with the client. This is what I've done before in this industry. And then finally, kind of doing the work, providing the solutions, providing reports and ways to do things better. And that can be really helpful. None of these styles are good or bad. They're helpful at different points in time. So, with the consultant style, the more mechanical, the more technical something is, the more that this is going to really be helpful to our clients. So we want to make sure that, if they say, I don't know how to, I don't understand something, you're really educating and kind of explaining stuff to them. So the challenges though with this consultant style is, are we really qualified to give them advice? If you only spend a few hours with the client, is that enough to justify us telling them what to do? And you can also think about, this experience from the world applied to their world. Do you have 20 years of experience, or do you have 1 year of experience in the past that's 20 years old and maybe isn't as relevant because things have changed? And so we want to make sure that we're kind of making sure we're not trying to put them back in our situation where we were 10 years ago or whatever. And also, is the client going to take ownership? Will the client buy in, or are they just listening, nodding? They're not going to actually do anything because even if it's great advice, it didn't resonate with them. You may be familiar with this. You work with a client, you send them things to do, and they do nothing. So, you can give them great advice, but if they don't have the buy-in and they're not hooked into it, they may go, I thought that was a good idea, but when I got home, I really feel more compelled to do this other thing. So we want to make sure that we can kind of connect with the client there and make sure that we're not just trying to push our agenda onto them. Now, we can look at the opposite end of the spectrum at the coaching side. So this is really letting the client guide themselves a bit more and just doing some brainstorming and asking questions. So the coach advisory style, best way I can describe it, they ask a lot more questions than they give answers to the clients. So they may probably also only talk 20% of the time. They're not talking 80% of the time, filling up the time. They're engaging the client and having them saying, what would you do to improve your branding? Why do you think that's needed? What difference would you see if your brand was different in these different ways? So engaging them in that process a little bit more. It's really about empowering the client so they're responsible for the decisions and trying to help them. Now, with this, of course, like all of the styles, there can be challenges. So with this approach, some people kind of make fun of this approach. It's kind of too passive. And so, they might be expecting more. And so, the client comes in and So, you say, hey, how are you doing? What do you want to do differently? How would that improve things? Okay, thanks for coming in today. Some people kind of feel like they're coming in to you for help. They want you to actually give them some help. You also have to consider whether the client has the capacity to find those solutions, because if they're brand new to it, that's a little different. And you can think about, is life coaching different than business coaching? So they may need more guidance with those technical aspects. So maybe business coaching is different, and this isn't necessarily as appropriate to apply this style of coaching versus with life coaching. So I wouldn't want to tell someone what kind of business to start, or who to marry, or whether they should go back to school or anything like that. That's a big decision they need to make. But with business coaching, you can say, hey, if you improve your ability to collect your accounts receivable, it's going to help your cash flow in these different ways. And that's not me necessarily telling them how to run their business, but there are some facts to that and kind of helping them. And again, if the client comes in for really technical assistance and they say, well, I need to register my business, or I need to get my tax ID number, I'm not going to turn to them and say, well, how do you think you would do that? What do you guess? That's not so helpful. We want to actually go like, okay, you call this office, you fill out this paperwork, you've got your business ID or your tax ID or whatever it is that they need. So we can give them a little bit more direction when that's what it is. So it kind of depends on the topics they're coming in. Now, we can also take a look at the choice in the middle, which is really facilitation. So providing some direction, maybe sparring with them a little bit with some questions, and maybe making some suggestions, but it's their choice. So the facilitator style is really about directing the process. So, let's do a 360-degree screening, or let's create a 30, 60, 90 days action plan. So it's about kind of directing the process, but not necessarily directing what they do in the process. And it's also looking at, challenging assumptions and looking for those deep causes. So taking a look and asking them, do you see another way maybe, but not just leaving everything to them, but kind of challenging a little bit. Following up, keeping track of those decisions and the actions agreed upon. And so helping them to see, oh yeah, this is what I need to be doing. So you're kind of holding them accountable and their feet to the fire a little bit. And doesn't give necessarily advice, but definitely shows them the path and which way they could go. So it's sort of that middle ground between being directive and you should do this, which again, really helpful for technical issues. Here's how to, register your business or things like that, versus what kind of business do you want to have? That's not really your job. It's not your business. So we did this workshop, this OnTrack webinar earlier today, and one person said, when they come in and they say, what kind of business should I do? I just say, am I your customer? If I'm not, then why are you asking me? Ask your customers. So we want to direct that back to the person who's actually going to be spending the money. So there's another story of looking at giving advice to a client about their logo. And with this, as many of you know, I was a business advisor for many years and was a director then of a small business development center in Illinois. So a client comes in with 3 versions of a logo and asks, which one should I choose? So, you can look at the 3 logos, and I remember thinking like, oh, the middle one, the second one, definitely. But you don't necessarily want, I didn't want the client to pick the logo that I liked just because I said so. So instead, give the client a process. So I said, it doesn't really matter what I think. So why don't you go and ask at least 10, if not more, of your customers or potential customers, which ones do they like? Then they go off, come back 2 weeks later to the next appointment with a smile. I was like, I did what you suggested and I got some really great feedback. And I feel really confident that it's that second logo, the middle one, that I should use. And then we started talking about creating a brand around that. So it was never necessary for me even to share my opinion. I just facilitated the client to find the answer themselves. I don't have to necessarily give all the answers. I can just create that process to help them. So we've got this quote from someone from the Faroe Islands said, I always let clients fill out the decision sheets themselves, but I facilitate the process and explain issues they don't understand. When you coach instead of giving advice, the clients get more committed and they take ownership of the work. And that's what we want. They want them to take ownership of the work and not just do it because, well, my small business development center person told me to do this. That's not really how they should be running the business. They need to have that ownership themselves. But of course, there's challenges with this as well. And so, can we convince clients that just facilitating is giving advice, advising on the process rather than the conclusion. And we help them to see that that's really where this is. When they sometimes come in, and I know they come in and they want you to tell them what to do. They really do. So that's always kind of a challenge at times. A real quick story. When I was getting my master's degree in counseling psychology, my last year of graduate school, I did what they call practicum. So I worked for some hours at the health center at the counseling center on campus where I was going to graduate school, and then I worked at a local center, at the family counseling center, and I did therapy with people. And I would supervise. All of my sessions were recorded, and I had my supervisors at the center and at the university all had PhDs. They were listening in, and we'd have weekly meetings about my caseload. And then we also asked our participants who were working with us. They knew that we were in training, that we were graduate students and finishing up our degrees. And so they got surveyed as well. And there was one person in our class that all of their clients, their patients, loved this guy. And I was just like, why, everybody, he's a nice guy, but it was like, why is he getting these superlatives? And I found out from one of the professors, one of the PhDs, that he was just telling everybody what to do. He was just telling everybody, it's like, oh, you should get divorced. He was just telling them what to do. And I was like, I don't think that's really therapeutic. That's not really what you're supposed to do as a therapist, that I can't just tell you. That's got to be the client, the patient's decision, not my decision as a therapist to tell you that what you should be doing, that you should go for a job or whatever it is. So that's sort of like thinking through the process and not just always giving them that, here's what you should actually do. So the closer you can kind of move from consultants through facilitation to coaching, we're really helping to respect their wisdom, their insights. The more we can help them to listen to their own insights, the better. They should have a closer feeling of what's going on in their own industry and with their customers. So maybe we can help them design things, ways to test things out. Fail fast, as Eric Ries, the author of Lean Startup, calls it. So helping them with the testing process. So how can we help them to think through the testing process and what they want to figure out and kind of coach them in that way? So we can change our role from expert advisors to expert facilitators. No one can be an expert in every area, but you can always be an expert facilitator to help the client find the answers, even if you can't give them the answers yourself. It's really the process of decision making, and that's a great thing to be an expert on. So I'm interested in hearing from you guys what you think about these different coaching styles and how you've used them yourself. So I'm going to stop sharing here so I can see everybody, and you guys can share any comments or things that you've kind of noticed as you've worked with clients.
Afternoon, everyone. I'll jump in.
Excellent. Hey, Gio.
Hi, Elizabeth. All right. I saw myself in the story that you're telling. I know sometimes for me the challenge I have is I tend to do the work for the clients. So by asking the questions and I do the work, I think I've been combining a lot of coaching and facilitation, and I think I may need to learn a bit more of how to better facilitate. I know I have an idea of how to direct the process, but I think where I need to develop is to learn how to engage a client in such a way that they take 100% responsibility for the work that they're doing. So those are just some thoughts flowing through my mind right now.
Yes, and I think the more it's the big life decisions, the more they have to be the one that makes those decisions. We can't do that for them. I can't define what their passions are or what kind of business they want, or what niche of customer segment they want to go after. They really have to have that and have a gut sense of that and understand that. But then again, when it's more technical and they're like, I don't know what this means, I don't know, it's like, if you start collecting your accounts receivable, you're going to have better cash flow. That's
I
just
think,
kind of basics.
I think what I've realized about myself though, GrowthWheel has assisted me in, there are things I'm not technically capable in. And I find that when I come out, when I'm in situations like that, I find myself doing more coaching. So I'll definitely ask more questions. I'll definitely lean on the tools and allow the client to use the tools to bring out their answers. So I definitely see where I think an effective advisor or coach, I think there's some points where you'd have to use all the styles in certain situations. I think that's also what's going through my mind, because there are times when I may have some, especially when I work with students, because I myself was an entrepreneur. I came through an incubator system. I have some experience coming through, so there are some things I can pass on. But I realize that I think an effective business advisor is someone that is able to combine the different styles when necessary. I think that's something I'm also thinking about as well.
Absolutely. Andrea, your hand is up.
Hi, I just wanted to agree with Gio on that, because I find that it depends who you're talking to and what type of advice and the way that you deal with it. I have some clients who just want me to make decisions for them, and I will not do that. If you're spending even $300, you have to make the decision. And I think a lot of it has to do with, for me, it's always going back to the customer, deciding what you want to do and go back to the brand, because I think that's the piece that they can't move forward until they've really decided what they want to do. So I agree. It's got to be like, it depends. I have some people that I will go to the GrowthWheel because they feel that they almost know it all. And so I'm like, okay, so let's assess it. You tell me where you are on this. So I will take them back to a different place. So really it's a combination of the tools and the way that we deal with things. And it has to be based on the personality of the people that we're dealing with, for sure.
Absolutely. And I noticed that Bernard wrote also goes along with all three areas, prefers the coaching and facilitation. There's clients that I do few things for them. So however, anything's done only after a zillion questions. Oh, Bernard, you got a zillion questions. I love it. And Rebecca also said, combining the styles depending on the client's needs. And John said, after having done this for so long, I find it really hard to shut up and ask more questions. I think that is a good point, because it's like, you know what they need to do. So you just kind of want to jump in sometimes for them, don't you? And save them time. But that's really not part of the process. They need to learn it themselves. John, that's hilarious. Jacob's writing, for a new client, get a sense of their expectations, what they know, they've been told about what to do. It helps adjust how much time I spend on answering the questions versus asking questions. Yes. So yeah, get a sense of their expectations. But as Andrea was just saying, it's like, they just want you to do stuff for them. Wouldn't that be easier? Of course it is. That's why I told you about my colleague in graduate school, where it's like, he got all these high reviews because he just told people what to do. So he took all the responsibility. It's like, that's not what that's supposed to be. You can't take responsibility for someone else's life. So you can't do that. Someone else has to do that. And Carrie put in a book about the coaching habit. Excellent. David, I thought you might want to comment about how, GrowthWheel, when you were creating it, and part of the reason it went nationwide in Denmark was it didn't really provide the answers. It wasn't the consulting.
Yeah. So this is something we discussed in the session here this morning with some of your colleagues who did the early morning session for some of them, and we talked about exactly how in many of the government-funded business advisor systems like the SBECs, the SBDCs in the United States, also possibly in Jamaica with Development Bank, and of course women entrepreneurship centers and so on, that there can be a discussion about whether this government funded activity is competing with private consultants. And when GrowthWheel was first rolled out in Denmark in 2008, one of the reasons they chose GrowthWheel was that it was very clear that this was not competing with private consultants, because clearly GrowthWheel did not give specific advice. GrowthWheel was a process where people were taking through mapping out issues and being facilitated through a decision-making process So there was no actual consulting as giving advice or producing solutions. So it's kind of inherited in the whole GrowthWheel way of doing things that it is designed for coaching. Now, can it be used for giving specific advice? Yes, very much. And we usually joke and saying, well, if the advisor just filled out all the decision sheets and answered all the questions, that's when it becomes advice, because now you produce an actual solution. But it really is a gray area. I told also this morning a story that I had one advisor on the course in Denmark at the time who was previously a CPA. And when we talked about how we were not really allowed to give advice, he said, well, sometimes you just have to give advice. If I sit with a client who are not collecting their accounts receivables, I give them a specific advice. Get started with that, right? If not, you get cash flow problems. That's real advice. So sometimes it's not so much advising, but more providing clients with, factual standards, basic business concepts that is not really up for discussion. It's not your opinion. You're not trying to impose a particular, approach to a client. This is just fundamentally, good business standards. So that's not the kind of advice that this suggests, these coaching styles suggest that you should not give, but it's really all in a gray area. And that's why it's great to see, seems to be consensus here that you really got to, as Rebecca says here, combine styles depending on clients' needs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, Elizabeth, right? When you talk about coaching throughout different stages of the life cycle. So we'll get back to that a little bit more later.
Absolutely. It's always about meeting the client where they are. I always talk about in our certification courses, we're not robots. And so, we're going to react differently. And some people need a little more hand holding. Some people need bad cop. So it just depends on the person. So, and anybody who has kids, if you have more than one kid, you're going to notice that they're going to react differently when you punish them or you reward them. It's just not the same. Even though you've raised them in the same household, they may react differently. So it's always so interesting how we're also individual and unique, and what does that client need then at that particular time. All right, so let's kind of look at how we can use GrowthWheel tools, and then also, as David was just saying, about the life cycle. So we're going to take a look at those two aspects now, and so got that running here. So GrowthWheel and using the coaching style with each of the tools. So the 4 tools can be used with all the different styles. So the first tool that we always look at is the 360-degree screening tool to help those clients get focused. And, it's great because we can, kind of let the client decide the type of screening. So do they want to do a status assessment? How's it going? Do they want to do an opportunity assessment, or do they want to take a look at the skills they need to bring on? I always say those are the skills they need to hire or acquire, or it's a nice bottleneck one. So which one do they want to take a look at? What makes sense for them? And also let them make the final decision about the 3 focus areas they want to. So engaging the client and letting them sort of taking that initiative about what they want to be working on puts the ball really in their court, rather than me telling them this is what they need to be working on. So we can also take a look at the frameworks. Those are outlines of topics we want to discuss. I always describe that these are like all of the whiteboards you ever drew up for a client, but they're just pre-done. And so they're ready there with, little summary and key points of the topic, list of key questions you might want to talk to the client about. So you've got a little description and you've got some topics of discussion. So have the clients reflect on those discussion questions and have them explore and develop that language. How does whatever that framework is, how does that apply to their business? It does in some way. It just depends on how it does apply to them. And then also we can take a look at those decision sheets. Remember, they're just simple visual outlines of the alternatives that you have when making a decision. They're designed for the client to write on them, but they don't have to write on them. They could just use it to talk around it. That's okay too. So, they have the right questions. I would always tell my clients, they're not going to give you the right answers. They're going to ask the right questions. So, since they don't have any conclusions for them necessarily, ask the client, what do you think is the most important thing for you to work on here? And then we can also, of course, take a look at the 30, 60, 90 days plan as well. So helping clients to really think about what are the decisions and the actions that they need to be taking, and have them make a list of the things they can do. You can review and talk to them about it, and help them to realize like, you might be putting the cart before the horse on this one. Maybe you need to do this first, and help them to reorganize or restructure some things. So that might be some options, but you can definitely use all these coaching principles with everything that's in the GrowthWheel toolbox. And in fact, in terms of the entire toolbox, you can ask them, you can kind of show them everything, because when you invite them to the platform, they get those videos that will walk them through all the aspects of it. So which tools do they want to work with? Maybe they're swamped with to-dos and they want to start a 30, 60, 90-day plan to figure out what gets done when. So let the client choose, because the only right sequence of using the tools is the one that really supports the client and where they are right now. So, the toolbox can be used in many ways. Maybe you want to start with the screening, then you look at questions with the frameworks, and maybe pull out a decision sheet to help have a little brainstorming session with them, and then create the action plan. Maybe you don't need the frameworks, or they're not stuck. They just want to kind of get a sense of like, okay, this is where you're kind of focused on right now. And then, here's the action plan, or just go right to the action plan. I don't know if you can tell, but the game plan is to end with the action plan. So what gets you to the action plan? Because I don't know how to coach them. I don't know what they're working on. I need to know what's on their docket. What are they doing? What are they working on? And so how can we kind of help them to get to that? So taking a look at advisory styles with the life stages as well. So in the early stages, with our clients, they might be making decisions about their products or services, their team, cash flow to support as they get their very first customer. But if they're down the line and they're more mature, maybe they're building the team, they're innovating the product portfolio, adding on new services, getting new customers, new segments even, or, making sure they've got the cash to sustain the growth. So the challenges really are the same. They're just on different levels. And so we can kind of help them to think through. Reminds me, my husband had a friend, he's since passed away, Farrell. He used to say, money problems are the same for everyone. It's just the zeros that are different. I always thought that was a great line, because of course, the more money you have, the more you spend it. So it was just like, the problems are all the same. It's just the zeros that are different. So it's just a scalability issue. So I think you can apply coaching to all life stages. Now, a mature company may want more executive coaching. Maybe they're focusing more on leadership, or even, delegating, or anger management, or creating a culture. A startup may need more business coaching, more about the nuts and bolts of the business rather than refinement of the leadership team. So taking a look at this with different levels. So if we've got a novice client, maybe they're pre-revenue or pre-venture, they may need more specific advice. They're just not informed enough to know the difference. So it's more educating and more specific advice about that. But sometimes a little advice can go a long way. So you just want to give them some kind of starting points and get them moving and kind of help create a system or a process for them. But if you've got a client that is more large or mature, they're a little bit more of an expert position, you might even be wondering, how am I going to help this sophisticated company that has, more layers of management to it? And that's where coaching or facilitating might really be the best way, because you can use the GrowthWheel tools. I used to, when people would say, I really want to do some strategic planning, I use the decision sheets because they're brainstorming tools, and I'd use them in a group setting, and I'd send them out to everybody, and then I'd collate their answers and share them with them. And I didn't give any advice. I just facilitated their process as a team in terms of, what do you want to be doing going forward? What do you think is important to you? So regardless of the client skills, you're going to find yourself giving, as we've been talking about, advice, you're going to facilitate, and you're going to coach. So this is really the art of coaching versus the science of it. So where is the client? What supports them in this season of life? This is where we really need to listen to them. If what we begin with seems too directive or too passive, we can adapt. So I prefer to check in with the client. Is this meeting your needs? Is this getting you what you want? And are we moving to where you wanted to go, and helping them to think through that? So I'd love to hear from all of you, a few words about the coaching styles and when to use, but I want to hear from you guys about that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can get feedback from all of you about the lifestyle, life cycles, where they are, and sharing that and using GrowthWheel tools, or, how has that worked for you? Any comments? I saw Jacob wrote about that they have checklists that's just basically fact-based. So, process like filing an LLC or hiring persons, so you can move to coaching and strategic planning quicker, right?
Yeah.
You kind of check off the boxes, like, gotta get that done, gotta get that done.
And again, like you spoke to, Elizabeth, those kind of and those kind of tools that Jacob mentioned here, that might be in the early stage. Coming to a large company, those things they got ironed out a long time ago. Probably there could be new areas they're moving into, of course, where they need certain things. Maybe a large company never had an SBA loan before, so that'll be a first for them. But I think it's really interesting when you talk about this, Elizabeth, this life cycle approach, that you can really use a coach in any stage, right? It doesn't have to do with your expertise or your life stage. Really, it can be applied at any time. It goes to show how this whole approach we've been talking about today have so many advantages of empowerment of the client, having the client take ownership, have you take a burden off your shoulders, so you don't feel that you have to be the one that have to come up with all the right answers all the time, because that's really hard when you meet with someone for an hour and they think about it 24/7. So and a renewed look, at how you can move back and forth on the scale from coaching to advice and facilitation in between, I think is a very powerful message.
Other comments from you guys? You can unmute or put it in the chat. It's up to you.
Yeah, we love to experiences, right? So if anyone had an experience on doing one thing or the other, all advisors here would be curious to hear that. So please feel free to share. Gio?
Rob, I saw your hand up.
Yeah,
Rob can go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment. I think the more time I spend on the assessment phase, the better my engagement skills are. And so we kind of follow a medical model that fits within the GrowthWheel tools. So we do an assessment, and then we do a diagnosis, and then we do the prescription, 30, 60, 90. But I think we kind of start with like 4 questions. You want to grow, yes or no? They always say yes. You want to grow the top line. You want to increase your gross margins. You want to increase pre-tax top profit. They all say, yeah, well, all 3. But there's different strategies for each one of those answers. And then we really focus on constraints. Well, why aren't you doing it now? What's getting in your way? And then that's where the GrowthWheel assessment tool is very valuable, I think, just to identify, get them to be really clear about where they go. And then we ask them if you had any resources available to you, how would you remove those constraints and accomplish what you want? So, I love the facilitation model. I've known David a long time, and when he first introduced that to our group in Oregon, it was like, we don't have to be the expert, but we have to become really good facilitators. And I think it's our basic role is to help people think through what they need to think about so they can make an informed decision. And so
and that question there, Rob, that's a really powerful question, I think, for everyone to ask. Why are you not doing it now?
Yeah,
that's a really powerful question, as you speak to. It is a question that deals with constraints, a very, very empowering question. What would it take for this to happen now? And sometimes, I guess the questions, once you get a question like that, it is so simple yet so powerful. And another question, of course, that we are using in GrowthWheel is which area should you focus on right now?
Yes.
A super simple question.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on. Yes, for sure there is, and you're going to keep on working on all these things. When you look at GrowthWheel, the 20 focus areas, it's not like you only do a few of them. every week you probably do most of them, maybe not all of them, but half of them, right? You do marketing, you do your accounting, you work on your business processes, you work with your employees, you see a newsletter from the competition, you work on improving your product. Everything is going on all the time. But the question is, what should you focus on now that would give you the most results to where you want to go? Or another question, of course, with GrowthWheel is, what is your top 3 ambitions?
Yeah.
And it's just like that question you had, Rob, which I think is really brilliant. If we can all identify those simple, really simple, but very, very powerful questions, right? Then we can, maybe have those breakthrough moments where the clients suddenly realize, oh, I've been focused on something wrong. Like you remember from the certification course, we have what we call the root cause analysis or the reframing of the problem. Someone thinks they have a sales problem, but the real problem may be that the product is not selling because it's not good enough or anything. We have all these relationships across, right? It's another example of one of those simple, powerful questions. Is there another reason why this is not working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've learned over time, if I can get people to focus on the 20% that generates the 80%, the Pareto, and that is like, that helps people just say, okay, I don't have 1,000 things to think about. I've got 3 things that I need to work on that will leverage my strengths, will allocate resources appropriately, and will deliver the highest results in the shortest period of time.
Right. Thanks for sharing, Rob. Someone else had a hand up. I think it was you, Giovanni.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob, for sharing. What came to mind from our last session was that I like to observe clients a whole lot. I found out that you have startup clients that gain experience very quickly. So here at our incubator, we had a client that came in. They already had pitch decks. They already had multifunction teams across the region. So they were working remotely with different teams. They were building software. They were aware of the valuation and raising money. But when we sat down together and we started working through GrowthWheel, I realized that they needed help in focusing. They needed help with organizing. Right, so much was happening so quickly that when it comes to like planning for investment and planning what to invest in next, that was a challenge for them. And I realized that just directing them to specific GrowthWheel sheets. I think the one that we looked at was something in funding. I think it was investment catalog. That was the sheet that we looked at. And when we went through that sheet, they realized that there were things that they didn't have to invest in right now, and they had a lot of potential in the company to gather new investment based on how they organized the assets that they needed. And I realized that if the client has gained a certain level of experience very quickly and is knowledgeable, it's easier to ask guiding questions and make suggestions. But I find that now sometimes you have clients that, like some clients I'm dealing with now, they're capitalized, they have funding, they have a lot of technical ability, but when it comes to growing and moving the business forward, they're not very good at doing that right now. So they need a lot of external help. So those sessions are now spent a lot of questions. We have a specific work plan, and there's a lot of questions thrown at them. And it's not until like they're asked the questions and they actually realize, but wait, we have an idea about this, but we didn't know how to organize it. We didn't know that this fits here. We didn't know that our product had this advantage over our competitors. We didn't even know that this was an advantage. So I realized that it's very important for us as advisors to very quickly assess where our clients are in terms of skill and experience, despite age, quote unquote.
Yes. As you speak, Giovanni, it occurs to me that there really are questions on different levels. Just before with Rob, we spoke about these powerful generic questions. Why are you not doing it now? What should you focus on? Does this relate to anything else in the business? And those generic questions. And those questions are so generic that you can apply them for any situation. for any life stage, you know. But then what you also talking about, Giovanni, sometimes there's also some very specific questions. And for example, if you take that decision sheet you mentioned, the investment catalog, that's the decision sheet where you ask people, you know, if you had $1 million, how could you possibly invest it?
Right.
Or whatever you have, what are the things you would like to invest in? And then you make a catalog. You know that you're not going to invest in everything, and certainly not at once. But building a catalog make you realize, oh, there's some investments that are, you know, more profitable than others. Some have a better cash flow than others. Some invest more smaller than others. So maybe you want to make 5 small investments instead of 1 big. And at least you can show the bank, look, I'm going to be a good customer, because when I'm done with the first investment, I'm going to come back to you with the next one. So we're looking for a long-term relationship here. And by the way, that decision sheet, of course, now have a live online, a life online, I was going to say, because we made the new budget feature where you can actually create that investment catalog online, type in a few numbers and see all that. But that's what I was getting at, is that is an example where you have very specific questions. Which are the investments? What's the total investment? What is the return? How fast is the return? What are the risks about those investments, right? So that's where we have questions at these 2 different levels. And of course, all the decision sheets have all the questions when we're at the specific level. That's the work we've been doing with advisors from all over the world the last 12 years. It's just to take all these topics and list, as you look at the decision sheets, right? It's all questions about that. They're not always right on the, you know, dot for the particular situation, but you can always abstract from it and go like, well, this is what we got to deal with in this particular case. So I think, you know, a lesson from what you talked about, Giovanni, is really that we got to move up and down, right? Sometimes we have to ask very specific questions. When you're going to release the new blog post? What is going to be the content of your blog? And other times it's those big, you know, almost existential questions, or, you know, breakthrough questions, and find that combination between the two.
I have a question. How is it? All right. So earlier we spoke about that GrowthWheel wasn't necessarily made to compete with consulting or consultancies. But question is, how can we apply GrowthWheel to the consulting process?
Yeah, the way to do that, yes, absolutely. The way to do, I think, to me, when you are, you know, consulting, you're really helping produce the solutions.
Right.
So I think, and consultants charge, you know, by the hour, and a consulting business is to deliver not 1 hour of consultancy, but to deliver weeks or months of consultancy. So I think what the GrowthWheel does as the initial phase to private consultants, is that it clarifies the needs. And, you know, sometimes that's the part that consultants are not paid for, right? Come in and we'll discuss the project. I'll write your proposal, and the consultants, companies will write up a proposal. We will do market research for you. We will analyze different technologies. We're going to make calculations on the investments. We are going to, you know, do whatever they do, construct a survey. We're going to build some technology or whatever they're going to do. So all the work of clarifying the needs and what needs to be done is something you're not always paid for as a consultant. But what you are paid for is producing those things. Right? So that's how I think that if you are, and we have private consultants who are using GrowthWheel, so they clarify the needs, but then they take a much more active role in executing the plans. So if you look at a 30, 60, 90-day plan, if you work as a private consultant, there's going to be many of those items that are on you, right? And you're going to discuss with the client, what will I do? What will you do? And the consultants will be able to do certain things because they have expertise. For example, getting financing for a client, introduce somebody to investors, create a pitch deck, or whatever a consultant can do. Write up a financial plan, write up a budget. If you're a CPA, which is another type of private consultant that are using GrowthWheel, right? They may not charge so much for the process with GrowthWheel, but then they get all the work relating to financial management that they're getting paid for.
Thanks, David.
Can I answer the way that I heard your question, Giovanni? See, I work for the SBDC, you know, and you know, our value proposition is to provide relevant, affordable, and accessible information. And of course, we have programs, and those programs are broken up into 2 pieces. The first is content. You know, it's a class, it's a workshop, it's an event to give people content. And then we all know, everybody on this call knows, there's a lot of content out there. I mean, you can get you know, almost anything you want on YouTube. But our value proposition is taking content and put it into context for the client, regardless of where they are on the growth chart. And it hits what Elizabeth's talking about, you know, meeting people where they are and taking that content. They don't know what they don't know, but give them that content and then help them think through, well, how does that apply to me at my growth stage and me personally? What do I need to do to think? What do I need to think through so I can make an informed decision to move forward?
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well put, Rob.
Jacob has another interesting comment here in the chat. We're just going to read it out. I find that using the 360 assessment is often a good way to get a good idea about the client's mindset and willingness to be coached, right? That's another thing we talk about. Are the clients actually coachable? And if someone have all the answers and rate their status as 100% all the way through, they might not be so easy to coach. Whereas others who may actually be doing pretty well, but rate themselves lower, is because they are humble enough, they are knowledgeable enough to know that they haven't figured it all out yet. So that certainly is an indication of that. Here Jacob continues that they I think I said it all, that they want to those that are more humble or don't think they have all the answers, they are more ready and more coachable. So now you have it that that process in itself may help you distinguish which clients that are coachable and you want to engage in, and which ones you may are not able to help. We talk sometimes about how advisors need a triage system, because many of you have more clients than you can handle. So like in the hospital, who needs urgent care, who can wait a little bit, and who can't you help at this point? And maybe, Jacob, the example you're giving there, well, maybe those are clients where you go, well, since you got it all figured out, come back when you have a question. They can either not be helped, or if they're right, because maybe they're right, they don't need your urgent assistance, whereas the others are the ones you can really help and create more economic impact with. So great point.
I used to do therapy with abused women, but I also did therapy with men who were court ordered to see me, so they didn't want to see me. And so I would say that, Jacob, I used to split those into 3 groups, just like what you said, David. So about a third of them, the fact that they got court ordered, that scared them straight, so to speak. They were like, whoa, like I need to take some responsibility. About a third I could make some progress with. And the last third were just like, I don't want to talk to you, you stupid woman. So they made no progress at all. And I was never going to make progress with them, and nothing was going to happen with them. They just were not going to connect. And so it was just an interesting way of kind of thinking of it. It's interesting, different life circumstances, but I saw the same thing decades ago when I was a therapist. So I was also a child, so they probably shouldn't have sent me in as a child to do therapy. So my husband won't let me get Botox. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic. All right. It's only Monday. I'm getting crazy already, David. Okay, so let's wrap this up since we're getting down to it. So want to kind of wrap this up, and thanks everyone for joining us for this. And we do these every single month. We do them at 2 different times. And next month we're going to have a new topic. We're actually going to be releasing some on-demand courses. So if you don't have time to do training, you can just have folks sign up with us. So you can have those folks join with us. We're also having a First Friday case study in July. That's going to be on July 9th. So if you, first of all, I'm still deciding who's going to be that person. If you're interested in sharing a case, do let me know. Just write to me, elizabeth@growthwheel.com, and be happy to have you there. Don't forget that you can always use our GrowthWheel hotline anytime you get any challenges. So we, have folks there. You can chat with folks, or you can have an individual session either with me or with David. So, and don't forget if you're not part of our Slack group, let us know. So it's a great way to chat with folks and ask questions, learn best practices, or join our LinkedIn group as well. Or if you tweet, use that hashtag @GrowthWheel. And so at that, I'm going to just get a little plug in for those things and make sure you're aware of those or remind you. But I'd love to hear from anybody else, and we can stay on for a few more minutes and chat if anybody has any questions. But if you're interested in First Friday and bringing a case, do let me know. I'm looking for July 9th. So that is going to be, it's not the first Friday, it's the second, but it's a holiday weekend, so the one before in the US and Canada.
Yeah, coming to this new case study is a great way for yourself to bring a case, even a person who's difficult to coach or something, and get that input from other advisors, or to listen in and contribute. So you may be able to help a colleague who have a difficult case, and you can bring in a new perspective. So this is a new thing that we started to organize in addition to these OnTrack webinars. We've had 2 so far, I think, Elizabeth.
Yes.
Hope to see you there.
All right. Put the chat. I'll link this into our chat in case you haven't seen that. So
yeah.
The link to it.
Meanwhile, I just feel like saying, Lamont, good to see you again as well. My last live course before everything went on Zoom was in Florida, where you were there as well with the group from UCF. So I hope we get the chance to be together in person again.
My last course was Yukon Territory in February. It's like, hey, there's Alaska. I mean, seriously? You go to Florida. I go up to northern Canada. That seems really fair.
But you were also in Jamaica, as we always say.
I know, because I was with Giovanni.
There you go. Yeah. All right. If there's no more last questions or comments, I guess it's a wrap.
All right. Thanks so much for being with us, you guys. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right, take care, everyone. Really appreciate the session.
Thank you.
And I got the times right this time.
You got the time right.
Yeah, I got the time right.
That's right.
All right, guys, take care.
See you.